100 migrants arrested in Colorado nightclub. What's this about? Whoa. Oh my goodness. Look at all those people.
You see all the people streaming out of the club there. It's a big operation. It included some 300 law enforcement officers from at least 10 federal agencies. In addition to the illegal immigrants, the DEA says more than a dozen active duty U.S. service members were also detained, some of whom were said to be working security. The agency also says the club has been linked to gang members from Tren de Aragua and MS-13. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi posted.
Wow. So here you've got this underground nightclub where a whole bunch of stuff is going on that shouldn't be going on, and you've got everybody there. Some of these look like normal people, but apparently you also had service members here who were doing security for this place. Something strange is happening.
Arresting 114 illegal immigrants, some of them with serious criminal records. The numbers here stand out to me. What stands out to you regarding this?
Everything.
Well, yeah, the numbers are incredible, but this is the second club that the DEA has raided since January with a large number of illegal immigrants. This operation was very well planned, very well coordinated by multiple agencies. It was not leaked, which is great because we had a leaked operation.
So you can see here they've got DEA, they've got the Postal Inspector Police right here. They've got 300 different law enforcement people involved in this massive takedown. And what this shows you is these gangs, if you go to a club somewhere and there's something happening at that club, it could be related to gang activity. And these criminals could be doing all kinds of illegal stuff in these places. So look at how heavily armed this soldier is right here. He's got multiple weapons, he's got body armor, and he's by a massive armored vehicle. These guys that came to this club to raid it with all these law enforcement people, they had no idea what was waiting for them on the other end of this. The people inside could have been incredibly dangerous. Here's some pictures of the club after the raid. They're saying Tren de Aragua is involved in this. That's that super dangerous gang that took over those apartments in Colorado and also out here in New York. Very frightening. But apparently this wasn't an accidental raid. This was a long-term investigation, and ICE and all these other law enforcement agencies knew who they were after.
And this has been a long-term investigation. Now, federal officials did undercover work, and they conducted surveillance for months to identify what was going on here.
We seized quite a number of guns and took a number of people into custody. As a result of this operation is that Colorado Springs is waking up to a safer community today.
So the government was inside this club. They knew that these people were armed. When they took them down, they had weapons, and this was going on for months apparently.
Rocky Mountain Field Division Special Agent in Charge Jonathan Pullen says significant trafficking and crimes of violence were happening inside the nightclub located near Airport Road and South Academy Boulevard. Officials made entry just before 4 this morning. ICE, one of the agencies a part of that operation, taking dozens of people into custody.
We had over 100 illegal aliens inside as well, and those over 100 illegal aliens were taken into custody by ICE.
Pullen says more than a dozen active service members were in the club during the operation, and they were involved in some of the crimes, either as patrons or working as armed security.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. So this was the kind of place that was putting on a legitimate front by hiring service members to help keep it safe, but all of the activities going on inside this place were illegal, and that was sucking in the general public into this cesspool, dragging them down with it. Nice to know.
Obviously concerning to have active duty military involved. We're working with our partners at Army CID on that piece. Obviously where we are here in the Springs, there's a lot of military bases here, so it's not necessarily surprising, but we're going to take that very seriously.
Federal officials say the nightclub was frequented by Tren de Aragua, MS-13, and Hell's Angels, but they could not confirm if any members were involved in the arrest.
The message is we're not going to stand for this criminality in our city.
This was dragging down the entire area. Having a place like this existing, it looked so legitimate. You had people going in here thinking that everything that was going on was above the board and possibly okay. And even if they knew it was illegal, the fact that opportunities to engage in criminal illegal behavior are out in the open and legitimate in a massive building like this, that's It's disgusting. But the number of law enforcement involved tells you that things like an open border and illegal immigration do pose a grave danger to our country. This took a small army.
After this massive operation took place overnight. Now, what we know is more than 300 federal law enforcement officers arrived here. Again, we're in Southeast Colorado Springs. We're directly across the street from the Satellite Hotel, just to give you an idea of just exactly where we
Wonder
are.
what's going on at that
And as you mentioned,
hotel.
this was an underground nightclub. We do know that there were a couple of other people that were also detained for having state warrants as well. And you certainly mentioned the military presence. Perhaps one of the most shocking, stunning details this morning that we were hearing is about a dozen active duty military members that were here overnight in this underground nightclub. And they were saying how they are now being referred over to the Army Criminal Investigations Division. But we do not know if they are active duty service members stationed at Fort Carson. Certainly, we know that Army CID is investigating.
So here's a big problem that not too many people are talking about with this. And what that is if you've got these gang members who are running these nightclubs and who are in the criminal underworld and are thriving down there and they're getting away with all kinds of stuff, that's just going to empower them. And that's just going to keep their operations going in this country for a lot longer than any of us want. And that makes it harder for ICE to stamp these guys out, because what do they do with all this money? They use it to rent apartments. They use it to get fake identification. They use it to get weapons and make themselves more dangerous. They just use it to further embed themselves in our society and hide out something that nobody wants.
But when we were speaking with the special agent in charge with the DEA, this is one of the things he talked about when we were specifically focusing on the illegal immigrants and this big investigation. Take a listen.
These crimes go hand in hand, right? When we find trafficking, unfortunately, we're finding a lot of illegal aliens. 200 people in this club, weapons, over half the people inside were illegals.
And also, here's a look at just what the scene looked like when we arrived. We showed up around 3 o'clock this morning, and it was a really...
So now we know why hundreds of law enforcement agents showed up. Half the people in this club shouldn't even have been in America. That's ridiculous. And I'm gonna guess that this place probably had a massive reputation that the entire area knew about, but didn't want to say too much about, if you know what I mean.
Seen. More than 200 people were inside of this underground nightclub, and as I mentioned, about 300 just federal law enforcement officers here. So that just goes to show you such a big response here. Things are certainly a lot quieter right now compared to when we first arrived at 3 o'clock this morning, but a big response here, and the special agent in charge saying that this is certainly important as they are taking a look at some of the criminal activity. And they also mentioned that there were other parts of the city that they were having these investigations this morning. We'll continue to follow up.
Oh, so this is happening in other parts of the city as well. This isn't just an isolated incident. Tell that to somebody who's pro-open borders and who says, oh, this stuff's not happening anywhere. It's not a big deal. These are just isolated incidents. No, this type of gang activity is happening all over the place. And you know something? The folks that are being trafficked into these situations, they, in many cases, may have come here unaffiliated with some sort of gang, but because these Tren de Aragua members are running these places, what do? They're human exploiters. We see their behavior all over New York City, where they've got people kneeling down on the sidewalk, selling stolen tools out of suitcases that came from Home Depot. Do you think those people want to be down there doing that when they don't have to work at all because New York will put them up for free in a luxury hotel? No, these people are being forced to do things against their will because they came into this country illegally, and all they can do is turn to the criminal underworld because committing a crime makes you part of that underworld. But now the question on a lot of people's minds is what's going to happen to the service members that were involved in this? That's a big deal.
Active duty service members helping as security here. Can you elaborate on that at all?
So it's an ongoing investigation, but we had over a dozen active duty service members in the club tonight, either as patrons or working as armed security.
How many of those were detained and what are they facing right now?
So Army CID was one of our partners out here, and they're going to work with us on what the next steps for those active duty service members looks like.
So what probably happened here is you have this nightclub, which has a physical address and is on the side of the road and is in this massive building. They put up an ad for security, and as we already heard, there's a lot of military personnel in this part of Colorado. So what happens? Some of those folks invariably get legitimate jobs working for this place where they had to go through employment verification, and now they're here as armed security, which gives this club a legitimate facade that it can show off to the entire world. And how do you think the troops that were found at this club possibly engaging in activities that they shouldn't have been in? Well, they found out about this place because of the troops who work there and who know about it. They probably said, yeah, hey, this is a military-friendly establishment. Feel free to come by. The people working there may have thought everything's fine, but then under the surface, there's other stuff going on that really isn't, and is connected to gangs and criminals.
This has been a long-term investigation by DEA and a number of our federal partners. And so we've been working on this underground nightclub for a number of months, doing undercover, surveillance, a lot of other work to identify what's going on here.
You said there were 300 federal law enforcement. How many people were actually inside of this underground nightclub?
We estimate over 200 people were inside the nightclub when we came here tonight, and so that's why we needed such a large force.
They knew exactly what was going on in this place when they decided to raid it. They'd been looking at it for months. They got 300 officers together to raid a club of 200 people, 100 of which should not have been in America at all to begin with. But the most fascinating part about this whole raid was that it wasn't leaked. We saw stuff like this getting leaked to the entire world before it happened just a few months ago, but not anymore. Look at this. 2 of the ICE leakers who disclosed operations previously were punished. These people were caught. They're being prosecuted. These were people who leaked previous plans that ICE had to go out and arrest people who shouldn't be in the country. They're putting everybody in danger. They're putting the community in danger because they allow criminals to escape. Had this raid at this club been leaked, you'd have had criminals who are still out there, gang members plotting to do these things in other parts of the country potentially, or at other businesses, still controlling their victims and keeping tabs on them. That's not what we want in America at all. Look at this. Previous leaks to the news media have involved raids in Los Angeles and Aurora, Colorado, where those apartment buildings were taken over by this exact same gang, this Tren de Aragua. That's ridiculous. And the most unbelievable thing to me is how people can think that by helping criminals like the people in this picture right here escape makes the country a better place. I understand that people in their minds think that if somebody's here illegally, they're automatically innocent of everything and they haven't done anything wrong. And if ICE comes and takes that person away, ICE has done something wrong. But we know that these are criminals. We know that these people are running all kinds of illegal operations out of nightclubs. And that's a bad thing. What do you think about that? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.